Welcome in to BKL Nightly. Thank you for joining us on this Wednesday ahead of the Bills' Week 2 matchup against the Jets. Bills coming off a pretty big one on Sunday, as everyone in the NFL universe is aware. Great comeback victory. We're going to see how they ride those emotions heading into Week 2. Divisional opponent on the road is the next challenge for the Bills. Now let's get into news of the day out of Orchard Park. First and foremost, we got to talk some injuries. A little bit of an extensive injury report today, just compared in other weeks. I mean, it's kind of expected to see that after week one, after a game situation, going full go against, especially a team like the Ravens. So first and foremost, Taron Johnson did not practice today. He has a quad injury. Sean McDermott did say that he re-aggravated it in the game. There's no update on whether or not he will be good to go for this weekend. But that is a big hit to the defense if he's not good to go. But we will see. We'll keep you updated to see where, that injury comes from. Also, on the defense, we've got some updates for Shaq Thompson. He did not practice today, was seen working out on the side. The linebacker played in game one, but was injured or did kind of aggravate an injury. A hamstring and hand is what it's listed as. But we do have some good news. Trey White was back on the practice field. It's the first time Trey White has been in the practice field since August 21st, August 22nd. It's been a long time. It's been nearly 3 weeks since Trey White has been out there. It'll obviously be a huge help to the defense, to the Bills secondary, if he is good to go on Sunday. Sean McDermott did say he's still day-to-day, so we're not sure if he will be good to go against the Jets, but we'll keep you updated. We'll see. I mean, it's obviously a very good sign that he is back out there today, even if it's in limited capacity. Baby steps is what we're going to take, and for a defense that struggled secondary, the secondary rather, that struggled in this game, it's a good sign to see Trey White back out there. We'll see. We'll keep you updated with what happens. All right, now we're going to take a look at some other injuries with the William Matar injury report. James Cook, new face on the injury report. Kind of wasn't on the injury report last year a lot either. And then today he's added with a hamstring injury, was limited. So he did practice a little bit, which is better than nothing. I mean, it will be a big hit to the offense as well, just kind of looking ahead to that next game. But we'll see where that goes. Tight end Dawson Knox also limited today. A lot of limited guys today. Hip for Dawson Knox. Came off a decent performance in week one, and now we'll see what this injury does for him. On the defense, we got Greg Rousseau. He was limited with a knee injury, and Brandon Codrington, the returner, also limited with a knee injury today. So, of course, we will keep you updated and let you know the rest of the week where these injuries goes, who will be on the field, who will not be on the field. In some good news, though, Keon Coleman and Christian Bernard were full go. Last week they were limited. Obviously, they did play on Sunday, but they were full go today. No re-aggravated injuries after that week one. All right, so week one, we all saw it. It was a beating for the first three quarters, and then fourth quarter Bills ended up getting it done. But, the Bills are not forgetting about those first three quarters. I'm sure you guys aren't either. You'll remember the fourth quarter, the final 4 minutes, and the comeback is what everybody's going to remember. But the Bills are remembering those first three quarters where the Ravens offense really just ran all over them. Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry could not be stopped in this game. So Sean McDermott said that he wants this week to be a hard week and kind of explained what that means in regards to fixing the mistakes they saw in week one.
It looks like truthful conversations and making sure we all know where we can improve, not beating around the bush in those conversations, because if you don't know what you have to improve on, how are you going to go out and improve it?
Yeah, full pass on a Wednesday after a 60-minute game where we had to play all 60 minutes. Hey, it's a little challenging. It's trying mentally, to get yourself back right, and, you still kind of hurting. I know a lot of guys on the team hurting, and still you put on the full pass and you go out there and you compete because that's who we are.
If you treat each practice, each game, each scenario in your head mentally in a similar sense, then the moment is never too big. And so the more that you can do that, practice that, train that into your mentality and how you do things, I think there is no up and down. You're always trying to be the same and consistent.
We have to make sure that we know that what we did needs to improve. And that's where you focus on that process and not the result. When I said it needs to be hard, when you try and prepare in the light of being an elite performer, then that elite preparation is hard in order to get yourself where you need to go.
So a lot of takeaways from those week 1 mistakes for the Bills. Going to try to apply those to week 2 against the Jets, who have a pretty good offense as well. Justin Fields, their run game as well. Justin Fields being a dual threat QB, it will be interesting to see how the Bills take those week 1 mistakes that were very evident through the first 3 quarters, most of the fourth quarter, and apply it to this week 2. We'll see if they can make those necessary adjustments. All right, well, the defense was a struggling spot of that week 1 win. It's no secret. Everybody knows that was, like I said, the run game for the Ravens was the highlight for them in the game. But there was one Bills player that kind of stood out above the rest. Ed Oliver. He had a great game. I mean, he was the one that turned the game around in the end, knocked the ball out of Derrick Henry's hands, and was the turning point of the Bills' win in that game. So today, Thad Brown talked to a few other of the guys, and to see, where Ed Oliver has grown in the last year and just what he's been doing for this team this year.
Ed Oliver said last year was up and down for him, but towards the end, he started putting things together and thinks Sunday's big performance was just picking up where he left off. What everyone with the Bills has noticed that is new with Oliver is a maturity and a leadership. Every dad in the world will be nodding with a smile when they hear Oliver's explanation why.
Having kids and having to be the head of a household and a leader and trying to guide them, that's kind of then trickled over into football, and then I become more patient and more, I guess, observers and paying attention to different things. And I really can attest just having kids, and they got a weird way of making you grow up real fast.
Oliver's domination thoroughly impressed his teammates, especially rookie Deion Walker, who told a great story about Oliver changing a substitution Sunday.
It did get to a point we on the sideline, and TJ was about to go in. It was like, and walked in, and now I see why. I see why.
The edge guys get paid a lot, and they get after the quarterback a lot, but typically when you're able to step up into a clean pocket, you're living pretty good. Now, when you're needing to step up and there's nowhere to step up because of interior pressure, that makes it really tough on us, and I think he's doing a great job of that.
He rolled my way this past game, and I was happy it was me, for my own personal reasons, but, it could have been anybody, and I'd have been just as happy.
Late last year, Oliver used a line of questioning from local media about the Bills' statistical failure on third down to that point as fuel, something he threw back in the face of us media after the game on Sunday when the Bills' defense had a good game stopping those third downs. Sean McDermott on Wednesday said, quote, "Sometimes people like playing with that chip on their shoulder. Sometimes they need that reminder. So if you guys want to do that again with Ed, be my guest."
All right. Thank you, Thad. It was really Ed Oliver was the Bills defense on Sunday. We talked a lot last year, a conversation just around the D-line of, a lot of guys that make an impact. Maybe the stats don't show that. I remember we talked about this with Greg Rousseau last year, and Ed Oliver this year. I mean, the stats did show this on Sunday. He had 6 total tackles, 2 tackles for loss, I believe, a sack, and then obviously that game-changing fumble in the fourth quarter, or forcing that fumble in the fourth quarter. So for Ed Oliver to really step up and become a leader, he's not a guy of many words, but we've, seen a few guys this year who haven't been guys of many words, but they have been described as being leaders and really taking that next step this year. And week 1, Ed Oliver was the guy. So it's really interesting to see what he does in the next several weeks to kind of, see where this goes this season. All right, so each week on BKL Nightly, we have a roundtable segment for you. Sometimes it's me and Thad and Caleb. Sometimes it's a mix of the 3 of us. Today it is Thad Brown, Josh Reed, and Carl Jones over at WIVB. They discussed several topics today, including Ed Oliver, including how the Bills respond to the mistakes that they made in week 1. So I'll let them take it away.
Joined now by Josh Reed, Carl Jones, getting ready for week 2, Bills and the Jets. And let's cycle back to week 1 just for a second here, because as great as Josh Allen on the offense and the 41 points was, Matt Prater, the whole thing, that win does not happen, flat out, period, without Ed Oliver. And Ed Oliver addressed the media today, something that does not happen very often. And I think it's not an example, but certainly underscores the point that Ed Oliver not only is a really good football player, but he's developing as a leader and a guy who's maybe a speaker for this team as well.
Yeah, one of the funny comments that he made was how having kids has a weird way of making you grow up pretty quickly. That was from Ed Oliver, and he's not lying. Trust me, I think you and I can speak to that for certain. Here's the thing. I thought it was interesting that Sean McDermott was asked about, hey, Ed playing with a chip on his shoulder, does he hear some of the outside noise? Without saying it, I think Sean kind of alluded to Ed listens and gets motivated by that just a little bit.
To that point, one of the games late last year when the Bills' third down defense was 28th, 29th in the league, and we all spent the week talking to the defense, there weren't any leading questions. It was simply, hey, you guys are this statistic, how do you fix it? And we got normal answers, whatever. And then the Bills went out and played a good game and won. We go in the locker room post-game, and Ed Oliver in our ear like, oh, third down defense, right. Third down defense. So there's no doubt he listens to all that stuff and uses it as fuel.
Is that something for a player that actually does work?
I'm of the belief that, like, bulletin board material doesn't do too much. Like in the middle of the second quarter, I'm not necessarily thinking about what someone said on X. But like Sean McDermott alluded to on Wednesday, everyone's different. Me, necessarily, I wouldn't care. I'm worried about not getting the ball thrown over my head 60 yards, not necessarily what a fan has to say. But everyone's different, and clearly this is something that motivates Ed Oliver.
He's a guy that's become one of the not polarizing, but the leaders of this team. Mm-hmm. You know, the ones that certainly push and pull when it comes to how this team goes. Now, moving on to week number 2, the Bills take on a Jets team that I think is very much Ravens-like. They look like the same kind of offense, just not with the straight to Canton, do not pass, go, do not collect $200 running back and quarterback. How good of a challenge is this for the Bills in that everything they did wrong last week against the run, they get to try and fix again this week?
Yeah, I think your point is dead on, but it's also like saying a portion of Ford, they're the same car, but they're both cars. You know, they're both cars. I mean, they both have steering wheels and they both have tires.
Justin Fields and Breece Hall are above average runners.
Yes,
yeah, at least.
And look, they got a weapon in Garrett Wilson on the outside, so they have the pieces. Carl has alluded to this in the past that, look, they've got a ton of first-round draft picks, high first-round draft picks, so the talent is there. And it's going to be interesting because they've got a new head coach. Aaron Glenn's new. So it'll be interesting to see what this version of the Jets looks like.
Especially because if you were to take their playbook and just go on whiteboard side by side, Ravens and Jets, they're very similar stylistically on offense. So some of the concepts where Lamar Jackson's keeping the ball, and when you get Breece Hall getting on the perimeter a little bit like Derrick Henry did last week, they're going to see that this upcoming Sunday. So, yes, they are not playing as gold jacket players this Sunday. But some of the schematic things that they failed at, they can fix that hopefully this upcoming Sunday.
I want to throw this at you.
Go ahead. You're good.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
We talked to A.J. Epinesa about this, and one of the things he said, and I've heard this before from these guys, is everybody in the league has a running quarterback now, which unless you're Detroit is pretty much true. So as a guy yourself who's done this and faced this and can kind of understand what the scouting report is like, how weird, unique, unusual is it that the Bills are facing a running quarterback like Justin Fields? Because it's almost you do that more often than not these days.
Well, because the Jets weaponize their quarterback. I think that's the difference between a running quarterback and a quarterback who gets weaponized. Lamar Jackson, they utilize his legs in the run game. They use read options. They get him on the perimeter. Caleb Williams is a athletic quarterback, but they're not necessarily running power reads with Caleb Williams or like pick a random quarterback. Patrick Mahomes is the same way. He's very athletic, but the Chiefs aren't running him, I can promise you that. So I think that's the difference between Justin Fields and these other quarterbacks.
What were you going to say before?
Well, I think we heard Sean McDermott talk about it today when it comes to listening to what the tape is telling you. Look, they had a great game. It was a big win, a good comeback win over the Ravens, but plenty of learning points. Even on the offensive side of the ball, we heard Joe Brady, the Bills offensive coordinator, really kind of lamenting those 3 and outs, kind of like, we've got to fix those, because he felt like it put their defense in a disadvantage. So I think the outcome, of course, the Bills want to get their win against the Jets. But to me, I think they want some more positives, in particular on the defensive side of the ball coming out of this Jets game.
To that point, I like the point you had when we were talking off camera just a minute ago. This game will be wildly different if the Bills win by 3, 37-34, than if it win by 3, 17-14.
100%, because the defense needs to put something on tape. There's never going to be a worry. If they win 9-6, people are going to go, that's fine. Josh Allen's going to figure this out. No big deal. But if the defense goes out and they give up 31 and the Bills win 34-31, there's going to be everybody's going to be smashing the panic button.
Especially with all the resources they poured on that side of the ball. This offseason, they've added Josh Palmer, and that's really it on the offensive side. Defense, you got 6 new defensive players. You got 2 rookies at cornerback, a safety in the back end. That's supposed to be fixed. The defense is supposed to level up. It is week 1. It was one game. I'm not ringing any alarms.
Against the Ravens.
Against the Ravens. Having said that, though, you do want to see some type of improvement heading into week 2.
Yeah, and the one thing I'll say to that, first of all, number one, if it's 9-6, there's going to be some conversation about the offense.
Of
Just
course.
Let's be fair.
Of course.
But number two, I don't know if the score really matters to me. You know, and I still think getting a win is enough. I don't think you want to see this defense get truck sticked for 60 straight minutes like they look like they did against Baltimore. But I don't know if there's a number or rushing yards allowed. I don't know if I care about all that. It's almost going to be totally eye test. And to Carl's point, even if it doesn't look good, it's still week 2. We don't know how good the Jets offense might be. They just put 32 on a Steelers team that we think is decent on defense. So if the Bills get up 31 this week, I'm not going to any panic alarms, even if I do want to see more.
I'll be hitting it with you. I'll be hitting that panic alarm.
Listen, as a defensive player, if it's not good, I'm banging that red button. Ring the alarms, everyone's in trouble.
So I bring Carl on. He's got a very particular point of view. Carl Jones, Josh Reed, thanks for joining me. Back to you guys in the studio.
I think I might be hitting some panic alarms too if the Bills give up 31 points to the Jets. But thank you guys. We are going to take a quick break. We will be back and we will answer some questions from you guys, the viewers, what you want to know ahead of week 1. We'll be back. Welcome back to BKL Nightly. It is now time for us to take a dip into the mailbag where you guys ask us questions ahead of the Bills matchup, of course, playing the Jets this weekend, coming off a big week 1 win. Thad Brown is out in Orchard Park right now. We're going to get right into it. We'll start with question number 1 from Drain Bead on Blue Sky. The Jets with Fields seem to have a similar offense to the Ravens, but without the level of generational talent that Baltimore has. Do you think that the defense will learn from their mistakes and make adjustments to improve and contain the Jets, or are we in for another shootout?
Yeah, I think this question is kind of the one that we picked from about a couple dozen that were all about run defense in general and, this Jets team in particular. And, first of all, are the Bills going to adjust? They're certainly going to try, and they talked about it today about trying to go to school on some of these things and to get better. They were better late in the game, to be fair. Those last couple possessions were good run defense plays. Now, this Jets offense, I kind of call it Ravens light because Justin Fields and Breece Hall on this offensive line, I think they're all above average when it comes to rushing the ball. They're not the walk straight into Canton and put a gold jacket on them as soon as they're done playing in the NFL level that Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry are, but they're going to be a good test. And I think it's an excellent test for this Bills defense because, they're going to get pushed in the running game, but not like the Ravens did. This Ravens offense, and I talked to A.J. Epinesa about it, you got to balance the idea that the Ravens are a generational talent, and you're not going to see anything like that again the rest of the year. The Jets are good, but not that good. So how do the Bills adjust? Can they adjust? There's some optimism. I was really worried about how easily this defensive line was pushed around, especially in the middle. Deion Walker, TJ Sanders, 2 rookies playing game 1 against the toughest offense you're going to face all year, and it showed on tape. This was not a team that seemed to have much teeth against the run. The place where I have the most optimism might be with Daquan Jones, who for 3 quarters did not look very good, and as much as Ed Oliver got a ton of the shine for making defensive plays late, Jones had a couple big run stops in those last 3 possessions that helped keep Baltimore from moving the ball. If the Bills can get more from 92 in this Jets game and the rest of the year, like they got at the very end of that Baltimore game, then there is hope this run defense can be better because they're just not very big behind that. Terrell Bernard, Matt Milano, Cole Bishop, these are generally undersized guys for their positions. The Bills need help up front. They didn't get much of it in game 1.
Now, someone you didn't mention is Joey Bosa. Had a decent game against the Ravens, but didn't have that breakout performance quite yet. So this user, HonCakes50 on X, wants to know, Joey Bosa played 69% of the snaps against the Ravens. Were you expecting much less? He says he thought he would be on a pitch count, and do you think they can't go that route anymore?
I love the creative addresses on your social media feeds out there, people. Keep them coming. It's very entertaining. As for Joey Bosa, look, number one about this, 69% seems like a big number. But the thing is, the Ravens only had 50 snaps on offense. I was talking to Connor McGovern today. The Bills had 80-something when they had the ball. McGovern said it's the second most he's ever had playing for the Bills. So not only did the Ravens not have the ball a lot, but in the second half, their longest drive was 4 plays. So it wasn't like the Bills were running Joey Bosa out there play after play after play. You know, Baltimore was out there for 3 or 4 plays. They either punted or scored and then came off the field. It gave Bosa, I think, the opportunity to play a higher percentage because, again, there just weren't that many snaps, but also because they weren't really consecutive either. They were 2 or 3 here and there. So let's kind of throw that percentage out for now. That still works out to about 34 snaps in the game, 35 somewhere in there. That's probably still more than I thought he would play. And I think there is some concern that the Bills might not be able to reduce that number because outside of A.J. Epinesa, I don't know if you can trust Javon Solomon or Landon Jackson, who is inactive, to play some of those run snaps that, you know, the Bills certainly saw against the Ravens. We'll probably see again against the Jets. I think Solomon's been better this year, but you'd rather have Joey Bosa out there than Javon Solomon in most cases. So at least for the time being, until some of the younger players develop a little better, I think Joey Bosa on the higher side is going to be what we'll see. We won't see 70% again, but 25, 30, 35 snaps, I think we might see it. And he did okay, too. And he's a guy that had about that much workload in the preseason, so it's not too dissimilar than what the Bills have been doing with Bosa all year long. One thing to keep in mind, though, Bobby Babbitt did say on Monday that that's a number they want to try and drag down a little bit as the season goes on.
Now, Joey Bosa was one of those guys coming off of that big Ravens win. He said he felt like he was in a dream. And obviously those emotions are still maybe running high, especially for fans. But now the Bills are looking toward week 2. The J in Gold on X says his biggest concern is the threat of a trip game. Big emotions, like I said, coming out of the Ravens, combined with an always tricky divisional opponent in the Jets. How do you think they handle this going into that game?
Yeah, I don't think it'll be a problem. You know, this Bills team is so good at keeping things even keel, keeping things the same, having the same approach. They know how to do this. You know, like this is the kind of thing that as someone in the media, I was thinking about coming in and asking the guys, okay, how do you focus? But I've done that story so many times with these guys because they play, you know, a big game once a month going back the last 3-4 years. It's not even a question of how do you do it. It's a question now of how do you always do it because you always do. So I don't think the Bills will be down emotionally. I think it helps this is a division game. I think it helps the Jets played well, too. You know, if they had lost 30-5 against Pittsburgh last week, I think it might be harder for the Bills to get up. But when you see a Jets offense that threw 32 on the Steelers, it makes it much easier for the Bills to get ready. So the other thing, too, is this is week 2. Like if it was week 12 and you've had 3 months of getting beat on and there might be a natural inclination as a human to want to take it down a notch, then maybe. But in week 2, I don't think we'll worry about that, too. Doesn't mean the Bills are going to win the game in a walk. I think this Jets team is feisty enough to be a problem, but the Bills will be ready to go mentally.
Will certainly be a fun one to see how the Bills, bounce back from that big win over the Ravens, now taking on the Jets in week 2. That is going to do it for dipping into the mailbag. Thank you, Thad. All right, if you have any questions you want to be a part of that segment each week, you can go over to Thad's Twitter at ThadBrown7. Every week he'll make a post of, drop your questions below and you can have the chance to get one of them answered in our weekly mailbag segment. All right, we got one more topic of discussion to get to. Back to Ed Oliver. He really was a bright spot in this game. Now, for this defense, they are playing this week a Jets offense that Thad described as a Ravens light, I believe, a little mini Ravens offense. Ed Oliver said he's pretty happy to face a run game similar to the Ravens going into this week 2 game. And it was pretty important to have some perspective of that week 1, what they were going to see and how they can kind of take that and what they learned into a similar style of play in this week 2 game.
We was playing Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson, 2 guys that could have won the MVP last year by themselves. I mean, I know Josh won it, but those 2 guys could have won it you know, they had a fair shot at it too. So to say you just going to stop those guys and take them out and they're not going to do nothing, you'd be crazy to say that.
And they are obviously a really good team. We hold ourselves to a really high standard. And, you know, we're chasing W's, not stats. I mean, that's something that we've been saying over the past couple of years. You know, if we can have that team first mentality, you know, we play for each other. We're chasing that W, and at the end of the day, that's all that matters.
Towards the end, we start playing Bills defense, and we just got to build on that. And, you know, you can harp on the bad or you can harp on the good. I'd rather take the good and build on the good than focus on the bad.
All right, so of course we are all looking to see if the Bills will take the good instead of harping on the bad for this first away game of the season against their divisional opponent in the Jets. All right, well, that is going to do it for me tonight on BKL Nightly. We'll be back here tomorrow. Don't worry. We'll have one last episode before this Sunday afternoon game against the Jets. But for Thad Brown, for Carl Jones, for Josh Reed, I'm Rachel Leiber. We will see you back here tomorrow.
Get the Rochester First streaming app today for everything you love from News 8 On Demand, plus exclusive shows you won't see anywhere else. Search ROC and download for free on Roku, Amazon Fire, and Apple TV.